showing us the prestigious Regarden Magical Academy, where what is valued most highly is a talent for magic, naturally. Despite this, our protagonist, Will Surfert, has no aptitude for it at all, and he's unable to use even the most basic of magics. He's only a book learner, so he's an honor student when it comes to note-taking, but it isn't something anyone admires. After all, most people believe that in this world, the supremacy of magic is absolute, because their heroes are mages. The most powerful wizards, the Manhwa&Anime, are the ones who uphold the sky. Long ago, people knew nothing of the sky, so they were trapped in darkness, and the world was terrorized by the celestial host until 5 wizards rose up against them. These wizards turned back the invaders, and they cast a seal over the sky, bringing peace to their world. The Manhwa&Anime is a title that has been passed down ever since, given only to the strongest. That's why everyone dreams of it at least once, the honor of becoming a mage. In Will's case, he made a promise with his childhood friend Elfaria, saying that they would reach the top of the tower one day to get as close as they can to the sky and become Manhwa&Anime to see the sunset that hides behind it. It was nothing more than an innocent childhood promise, but Elfaria was the real thing. With her talent, she became the youngest ever to earn the Manhwa&Anime title and left for the top of the tower. As for Will, being talentless, he's even less than mediocre, but unable to give up on the promise they made that day, he's still scrambling, even now, to achieve his dream of standing beside her. One day at the academy, his professor, Werkner Norgrim, scolds him for hitting the dungeon without permission again and going to the 7th floor solo. Despite this, he knows that Will needs those credits to become a Manhwa&Anime, which is why he usually goes to the dungeon to defeat monsters. Even so, Werkner reminds him that before he heads to the tower, he needs to advance to the upper institute, and to do that, he'll need writing, spell work, and praxis. He needs a tremendous amount of credits from the 3 curricula, and since he can't use magic, he'll never be able to earn spell work credits. Will clarifies that he already knows that, and that's why he's focusing on praxis, collecting credits in the dungeon. Werkner cuts him off before he can finish his sentence, and warns him that advancing through praxis alone is effectively impossible, especially for someone who can't use magic. Will's expression turns slightly sad because he knows it's true, but he's not ready to give up just yet. Werkner asks him to stop thinking about becoming a Manhwa&Anime when he may not even graduate. He also mentions that he already knows that he failed to earn any credits on his most recent exams, which means he needs to earn 4 credits by the end of the week. There are only 2 days left, so Will panics and tries to search in his notes for any 4-credit monster. Werkner casually mentions that there have been reports of a Baskerville on the 6th floor, a monster Will hasn't defeated yet. Will hugs his professor without a doubt to thank him, but they don't notice that one of Will's classmates, Cyan Ulster, heard them. Cyan immediately starts plotting something against Will because he really wants to get rid of him, since he thinks he's just a no-talent who's out of his league. Will soon heads to the 6th floor of the dungeon with his familiar Kiki to find the monster and get 4 credits. In the meantime, Cyan and his friends, Lyral Mars and Gordon Barrett, also dive into the 6th floor of the dungeon, planning to get rid of the monster themselves to steal the credits, because they don't want Will in the academy. Cyan firmly believes that a guy who can't use magic shouldn't even speak of the Manhwa&Anime, so the very sight of him offends him. They have an easy task, defeating the Baskerville before Will can. However, their plans are completely ruined when a different monster attacks them. Gordon gets crushed against the wall with a single brutal blow, so Lyral panics and screams, casting spells to try to save his life. Will manages to hear that scream, so he immediately runs to the place to see what's going on and notices that his classmates are being attacked by an evil sentinel, a 10-credit dangerous monster. The sentinel's habitat should be deeper down, so it doesn't make sense that it came up to this floor. Cyan's magic isn't having any effect against the monster, because an evil sentinel is on a whole other level. Despite Cyan's poor treatment against him, Will decides to step in to help him, because Elfaria once told him that he was kind and braver than anyone. He actually disagrees, because the only thing he wants is to be worthy of her, which is why he'll become like a lone sword at the very least. As Will lunges at the evil sentinel without a second thought, Professor Edward Serfens barges into Werkner's office to inform him that Cyan went to the 6th floor of the dungeon without permission. Even though this normally would have been alarming, Werkner tells him that it'll be alright because Will is there. He uses a magic device that allows them to see what's going on the 6th floor through Kiki's eyes. Thanks to that, they actually see Will brutally fighting against the evil sentinel, crushing it with his sheer strength. Edward can barely believe what he's seeing, because, just like Cyan, he firmly thinks that Will is a failure just because he can't use magic. Werkner informs him that Will is actually a true outlier, because he has superhuman strength a mage would never possess, a physique as robust as a dwarf's, and the observational skills to grasp an enemy's strategies after seeing them just once. It's true that Will can't use the slightest bit of magic, but in this world full of magic, he's the one and only warrior. During the fierce battle, Will's sword even cuts through the evil sentinel's magic, and with only a slash of his sword that surpasses even lightning, he slices the monster in half, destroying everything around. Immediately after defeating the evil sentinel, Will approaches Cyan to check on him. However, Cyan is totally infuriated, just like Professor Edward, who refuses to stand for this because he can't believe that someone who can't even use magic is able to surpass it. Now we see a memory of 5 years ago, when Will was only 10 years old and Elfaria had just become a Manhwa&Anime. The academy headmistress, Cauldron Anuv, decided to put put Will to the test, despite what everyone said about him not being able to use magic. Will's skills with the sword truly left her speechless, so she decided to allow him to continue attending the academy. After all, the concept of a sword yearning to be a wand was interesting to her. Since then, Will has been trying hard, despite what everyone says, because he wants to ascend to the tower. Back to the present time, Werkner explains that to ascend the tower generally means advancing to the upper institute. To become one of the Magia who reign from the topmost floor of Mercedes Kaulis, they must be recognized by the highest center of learning, the upper institute. There are two principal methods of advancement: to create a new type of magic or to earn at least 7,200 credits at their academy. Only a limited number of people can achieve the former, which means the majority of students must rely on the latter. However, Werkner warns the whole class that everyone is in danger of not making graduation, much less the upper institute. After a harsh supplementary class, Will meets with his friend Colette Loire, and as they walk through the halls of the academy, they find Cyan's friends talking about the evil sentinel of the 6th floor. They tell everyone that Cyan is the one who defeated the evil sentinel by himself, but Cyan is the only one who knows the truth, and he's completely furious about it. On the other hand, Professor Edward meets with the headmistress and tells her that Will Surfort should be expelled. Cauldron reminds him that Will is already in his 6th and final year at the academy, so they can't expel him now when he's come this far. Edward still firmly tells her that this academy has no need of anyone who is a warrior and not a mage, because there's no way someone can surpass magic without being able to use it. Despite all his complaints, Cauldron assures him that if they ignore the fact that Will can't use magic, he still excels to the degree that calling it mere excellence is insufficient. Because of that, she believes that he could become an artificer or a healer, and there are many paths open to him. Cauldron reminds him that this academy has a duty to produce learned scholars for the fated day. Edward clarifies that the boy in question doesn't seek to be a learned scholar, but a Magia Vander. Cauldron admits that that's a problem in this case, so she decides to allow Edward to give Will a test. Without wasting any time, Edward finds Will and brings him to the academy spell hall with him, saying that he can't overlook how he continues to fail spell work, so he'll give him a supplemental lesson. Edward informs him that his assignment is to land a single strike on him, and if he succeeds, he will award him 5 spell work credits. However, if he fails, he will have him leave this academy for good, because those without talent should not be permitted to even look upon the Magia Vander. Before giving him any time to answer, Edward starts casting magic spells against Will without mercy. Will can't do anything but dodge the destructive spells, knowing that he doesn't stand a chance against them, because Edward is the closest to actually becoming a Magia Vander, and his magic speaks for him. He only uses low-level dark magic spells, and yet Will is overwhelmed by his power. Despite this, he tries to use his superhuman speed to reach him and land a hit, but Edward's defenses are also impeccable. He's casting spells with no incantations, and there's not one hole in his offense or defense. Will can't even scratch him, and Edward doesn't give him a break from his constant attacks. While Will is on the floor, Edward talks about the Battle of Garzaronso Will admires so much. He mentions that the foolish dwarves incited a rebellion with a force of 10,000, but it took only one mage to quell the battle. With a wave of a wand, 10,000 dwarven warriors were annihilated, because that's the way of this world, and a sword will never reach a wand. Edward tries to discourage him and asks him what noble reason lives in his heart for him to want to become a Magia Vander. Despite how beaten up he is, Will stands up with determination, holding the goggles Elfaria gave him as a gift once, and he tells his professor that he really wants to be with the person he loves. That answer leaves Edward completely speechless, but Will stands his ground and tells him that he wants to keep the promise he made with Elfaria. Even if his reason seems ridiculous to him, and no matter how harsh his path may be, he will go see the sunset with her. Edward is completely furious now, and he's more than ready to put an end to this. However, Colette arrives just in time thanks to Kiki, and she gives Will the one thing he needs to be able to fight his professor, a sword. Edward still believes that there's nothing he can do against magic with a mere sword, but to his surprise, Will uses his sword to slice through his spell. Despite how terrified he is, Will faces him head-on and fights, dodging Edward's destructive spells at high speed. He thinks about the Battle of Garzaronso again, knowing that there's more to the story. A brave dwarven general named Gareth fought even as he lost all his brethren, and in spite of everything, he landed a single blow. In honor of his bravery, the mages recognized the dwarves' status. After all, a sword saw a wand and reached it. Will honors that story himself, and manages to break through Edward's defenses in the blink of an eye, attacking from a blind spot overhead. Before he knows it, his sword reaches Edward, creating a small cut on his cheek. As soon as that happens, Edward turns around to leave, and tells him that he's earned the 5 credits. Sometime after that, Will reads in the newspaper that Elfaria created a new original magic, becoming the first to achieve the remarkable feat of inventing 12 magics. Subsequently, the Upper Institute has passed an order down to the entire academy, and the client is Elfaria herself. As soon as Will reads about that, he goes back to his dorm to see his roommate, Rosti Noman, and asks him to make him a magic item. He explains that the order is to collect Frostwalker ice cores, because Elfaria apparently needs a lot of magic catalysts, and all contributing students will be compensated. Fortunately, Rosti already had something prepared for him, and mentions that he's made improvements to the previous version of his magic item. With that, Will immediately heads to the 4th floor of the dungeon, where a lot of students are already working to fulfill fulfill Elfaria's request. Since there are way too many students, Will decides to go to a more secluded area, and he ends up saving a fourth-year student named Iris Churchill from some monsters. Despite knowing who he is, Iris is still kind to him, so Will asks her if she doesn't feel any kind of disdain toward him for being talentless. Iris simply tells him that she couldn't possibly look down on the person who saved her, and explains that even if he can't use magic, she has a heartfelt respect for people with their own gifts. That aside, she mentions that she's also here for Elfaria's request, because she wants to be of use to the Manhwa&Anime and become one of the people holding up the sky. Will remains silent, knowing that she's not joking about that. They actually don't know the real sky, and even now, their world is hidden, because the tremendous magical energies of the Manhwa&Anime cloak everything, creating a false sky known as the Great Barrier. According to the lore, when the barrier falls, the world will once again be enveloped in darkness, and the calamity will begin. The students strive to meet orders not only because they admire the Manhwa&Anime, but also because they believe it will help to support the sky. Iris mentions that everyone else must have defeated all the remaining Frostwalkers at this point, because she can't find any even with her location magic. Despite this, Will notices a great amount of ice fragments, which leads him to a powerful Frostwalker no one else could detect. Iris tries to stop him, because she knows that he can't use magic, but Will thinks that magic isn't absolute, especially not inside the dungeon. He also has some knowledge and wisdom, and he believes that experience can make up for the rest. To their surprise, they don't find a normal Frostwalker, but a giant Frost Rex, the highest form of Frostwalker, which is worth 6 credits. This over 5 enemy is a special monster specific to floor 4, but despite how dangerous it is, Will manages to defeat it, using the magic items Rosti made for him. Later, at Mercedes Cowlis, the Wizard's Tower, Iris meets with 4 of the Manhwa&Anime, Cariot Incendia Wiseman, Eleanor Leos Alf, Zeo Thorzius Reinbolt, and Elfaria Albus Surfort. There, Iris informs them that in her observation of the academy, she discovered one interesting prospect, and she recommends Will Surfort for a position in the tower. Elfaria remains silent, while Cariot and Eleanor refuse without a doubt, and only Zeo finds the idea interesting, since he'd even take a dwarf if they're useful. Even though Eleanor disagrees with him, Zeo reminds her that it's nearly time for the Grand Magic Festival, so they can wait to make a decision until after they see those results. Later, it is explained that of the 12,000 total credits available at the academy, 7,200 credits are required for a student to advance to the Upper Institute, an absolute condition for becoming a Manhwa&Anime. Rihanna Owenshaus, Wignall Lindor, and Julius Reinberg are the only ones with over 10,000 credits. A student's credits are like an index by which their skills can be judged, so it's clear for everyone that those 3 are going to the Upper Institute. On the other hand, Will doesn't even have enough to graduate, since he only has 5,405 credits. Because of that, Colette tells him that he should participate in the Magic Festival, since there's a precedent for a student being scouted and ascending the tower on the spot. She reminds him that the Grand Magic Festival is a contest between students from the different tower factions, so this is where advancement to the tower is decided. The factions are the Lightning Lord's Wand, Thorzius Fash, the Sacred Elf's Wand, Eliaf Cannon, the Flame Emperor's Wand, Incendia Barham, and the Ice Maiden's Wand, Albus Vina. Setting aside the Light Sovereign's Wand, Mysteria's Noah, the current Manhwa&Anime lead these 4 major factions. Despite how tempting it sounds, Will reminds her that skipping the requirements for graduation and going straight to the tower hardly ever happens. Plus, he already tried to participate once, and since he can't use magic at all, people didn't take it very well. Even though he decided not to go, Will changes his mind that night after trying to defend his dwarven friends from Julius.